So where do we go from here? I don't know that I can see the future any more than you can, but I'd be happy to discuss that after I walk through with you some of my experience on these issues of gender and sexuality since I've become an elected official. I think it was around 1999, there was an interest in taking an old study that had been on the shelf since 1994 that the Human Rights Commission had commissioned to look at the state of affairs for the transgender community in San Francisco. So this is going back 15 years. And first and foremost, the task force wanted to amend the city health plan so that transgender employees in the city and county of San Francisco would have equal access to the city health plan. Now, out of maybe 27,000 city county employees, we had at the time maybe about 13 or 14 transgender employees, so just a very small fraction of total employees. But every headline, no matter how hard we worked with the media, said city to pay for sex change operations. And that wasn't quite the situation, though that was a part of it. And I got a call, my first call, from Bill O'Reilly. And he wanted me on his show. And of course, I was very happy to go on his show. First words out of Bill O'Reilly's mouth: "Why, Supervisor, why should my tax dollars go to pay for someone's sex change operation?" I said, "Well, Bill, it's a good question, but let me explain. That's not really what we're doing." So, Bill, if you're a non-transgender employee in the city and county of San Francisco in need of a hysterectomy or a mastectomy, hormonal treatment, psychiatric treatment, city health plan would pay for all of it. But if you're a transgender employee in need of the identical medical care, city health plan would pay for none of it. And I finished, and Bill O'Reilly said, "Supervisor, you make a compelling argument." You know, that's our victory. And the reason the health plan would pay for none of it is because we had not contracted with our health providers to do so, and they hadn't done the actuarial studies to determine what the cost would be. Just a little bit of the drama around the passage of that bill, and it was historic. There's never been a local ordinance like that. And just to show you once again, not unlike with our equal benefits ordinance, which literally changed the way businesses conduct their affairs around the world. The equal benefits ordinance, of course, was one of the first of its kind. I think Berkeley did it first. Berkeley City Council might have done it first. And then San Francisco, to require that if a business is going to contract with San Francisco and they provide any kind of benefits to married partners, they would have to provide equal benefits to their same-sex employees, couple employees. And the United Airlines sued San Francisco, and we won in every court case all the way until finally they relented, and of course then provided equal benefits to all their employees around the world. And now we have, I think, a majority of Fortune 500 companies providing equal benefits. So then when I got to the state assembly, I was elected 2002, sworn in, started 2003, took up the issue of amending California's Fair Employment and Housing Act, otherwise known as FEHA, to amend into it gender and gender identity. Now, it already included, this was protections from discrimination in housing and employment, which already included race, creed, color, religion, nation of origin, physical and mental disability. And we finally amended in sexual orientation as recently as 1999. And I was there in 2003. Former mayor of San Francisco, then Assemblyman Art Agnos, introduced the amendment of sexual orientation back in 1977. It took us 22 years as a state to amend in sexual orientation. We finally, Art introduced it every year. It was AB 1, AB 101, AB 1 again, until it got passed finally in 1990. And when Pete Wilson was campaigning for governor, He promised the LGBT community he would sign that into law if he were elected governor. He was elected governor, and then he vetoed it. And there were riots in the street. There were riots in the street because he had broken his word. And from our perspective, he was hardly anything of a leader as governor. And we've never made amends with Pete Wilson. But it finally got to Gray Davis's desk in 1999, and Gray Davis did sign it into law. So then 4 years later, we wanted to make it inclusive of gender and gender identity. Now, we did not have to define the term because it already was included in our penal code and in our education code. So we just were going to transport it into our Fair Employment and Housing Act. And the wording as existing already in code was that identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not it is that which is traditionally associated with one's gender at birth. And so, of course, this would protect all of our transgender brothers and sisters, but it would protect anyone who was, quote, gender variant, doesn't fit a gender stereotype. So a woman who may not be feminine enough to climb the corporate ladder, to get a promotion, to get a job, she would be protected. A man who may not fit a gender stereotype, may not be masculine enough in traditional terms, he would be protected. So it protected everyone and anyone who didn't fit into very narrow gender stereotypes that we operate with on a regular basis. And one of my colleagues who had preceded me in the Assembly just a couple years earlier had first introduced the bill, and it didn't get out of its first committee. The time wasn't right, and it got labeled as the drag queen bill. That's how seriously it was taken. It was referred to as the drag queen bill. And so, as I said, first year out, didn't go anywhere. I took it up in 2003, and we got it to the governor's desk. Now, Assembly members each year get to honor a woman from his or her community, from his or her district, to come to the Assembly to be recognized as that Assembly member's Woman of the Year. And you can imagine the wide range of women who come up from many of the Republican districts. They're country club women who are involved in the Republican Party. There are champions of civil rights efforts and those who work with disadvantaged communities. It's an opportunity to recognize women from ethnic communities who may have been unsung heroes. I invited my friend Teresa Sparks to be my Woman of the Year in 2003, and it was the first time that we ever had a transgender woman come to Sacramento to be Woman of the Year. And I did that not only because she's so deserving, and I have such high regard for all that she does in the community, but I thought it was also important, since we were moving that bill to amend the Fair Employment and Housing Act, for my colleagues to be able to shake her hand, look into her eye, and have the experience of meeting a transgender woman for the very first time. And so she has her own recounting of what it was like to walk the Assembly floor that day and to meet some of my colleagues. And of course, I took her to the most conservative colleagues that I had, because I wanted them in particular to meet her. And so it got to Gray Davis's desk, and I can't tell you, I know for certain, but if there was any silver lining in that horrible recall that brought us Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's that suddenly Gray Davis became a progressive champion in the last weeks of the recall election. And he not only signed our FEHA bill, but he also signed into law Assemblywoman Jackie Goldberg's AB 205, which extended domestic partner benefits and rights to within an inch of marriage. And he signed that into law as well. So we can thank the recall for progressive Gray Davis.